Welcome to the daily briefing from interest.co.nz. I'm David Chaston. Today we review the August migration numbers, check the July tax take on interest earned, take a closer look at that British bank crisis, and we'll wrap up with what the other media are reporting. August migration flows continue the pattern we have seen all year, high levels of non-citizens arriving permanently, matched by a similar outward flow by our citizens. In August we had a net seasonal gain of a bit over 700 people for permanent and long-term migrants. But the number of New Zealand citizens who are arriving back on a permanent basis continues to be very low and has been falling over the past 5 or so years. The number of our citizens who are leaving permanently was a record high for in August. Non-citizen arrivals matching this were also high, but not a record. As we have noted before, it is to Australia where we are losing increasing numbers, and the volumes going are now back up to the levels we last saw at the end of 2001. New Zealand has a serious worker retention problem. The data for tax collected on interest in July was released today, and it contained a pleasant surprise for the Minister of Finance. The rate of tax collections is increasing, and this new data shows that it rose more than 22% higher than the same month last year. In fact, our detailed monitoring of all financial institutions who take deposits from the public reveals that term deposits now exceed $88 billion at the start of July, with banks holding 82% of this, and the 5 main banks, ANZ, ASB, BNZ, the National and Westpac, holding almost 77% or $68 billion of it. Holdings of term deposit balances grew a bit over 20% year on year, which is an impressive achievement for a society that is supposed to have a problem with its savings record. And, according to Reserve Bank data, which is not quite as comprehensive as ours, but holds some detail we can't get access to, accounts with balances of $100,000 or more represent more than 3/4 of the value of all term deposit savings. Dr. Neville Bennett has written more on the British crisis enveloping their bank Northern Rock. This is an enormous institution with assets of about 325 billion New Zealand dollars. It's about twice New Zealand's GDP at current prices. An old-fashioned run on that bank has become the symbol of the sharp end of the international credit crunch. Surprising many, subprime loans originated in Europe as well as the USA, and this is reinforcing the difficulty of trading in credit securities. The consequences can be devastating for depositors and banks who hold this dodgy paper. And what Northern Rock shows is that even the central bank intervention and public guarantees don't necessarily quell depositor angst. Northern Rock is a mortgage lender. As such, it tended to borrow relatively short to lend long. It's a classic mismatch that can go horribly wrong. And New Zealand has institutions like that, even big ones. But our regulatory approach seems to be that depositors should research their institutions before investing monies, an approach that seems naive in today's world for most depositors. At a minimum, we must develop a comprehensive deposit insurance program in New Zealand. You can find Dr. Bennett's latest review from the links on this website. And finally today, a quick wrap-up of some other recent news. The Department of Labour's Job Vacancy Monitor showed a further slippage in its August index. This is part of the seasonal trend, and this measure of vacancy should now start picking up from here through to November. Record values of car loans are now being done using technology as part of the lending security. Veripay uses an automated electronic resetting system that gives borrowers visual and audible in-car payment reminders and missed payment notifications. And it immobilises the vehicle if the account is not brought up to date by the end of the grace period. You can get more news and stay up with Newsmaker Views on our news page. Join us again on Monday for the freshest finance news on the web. We'll see you then.